Imagine waking up tomorrow and discovering that the richest companies on Earth, the smartest investors alive, and entire governments have quietly transferred more than $10 trillion into one technology in under 3 years. 10 trillion. That's bigger than Japan plus Germany combined. And then imagine that after every chip was bought, every data center poured in concrete, every power plant locked into decades-long contracts, the actual new revenue that came back is less than 1% of what was spent. This is not a dystopian novel. This is artificial intelligence, November 21st, 2025. The spending started the exact week ChatGPT launched in November 2022. 2023. $210 billion on physical AI infrastructure alone. 2024. $385 billion, nearly double. 2025 guidance right now sits between $480 and $560 billion, with consensus at $520 billion. That is already $1.2 trillion in 36 months just on GPUs, custom silicon, hyperscale buildings, substations, cooling lakes, and fiber. Add R&D, engineering salaries, stock-based comp, acquisitions, and the hundreds of billions already signed for 2026 to 2029 power deals and chip pre-orders. And the real committed capital today is at least $1.6 trillion. With every sell-side model still forecasting another 8 to 9 trillion by 2030. That is the origin of every $10 trillion AI revolution headline you have seen for the last 2 years. Who actually wrote the checks? Microsoft is the undisputed king, over $120 billion committed since January 2023, $13 billion straight into OpenAI. More than $70 billion on data centers still under construction and the rest on land, power, and long-term contracts. Their 2025 capex guide alone is $55 to $60 billion, almost entirely AI-driven. Google is right behind at $95 billion and climbing quarterly spend, now running at $18 to $20 billion, more than their entire annual capex in 2019. Meta has burned through $65 billion while Zuckerberg repeats, "We'll spend whatever it takes." Amazon already dropped $75 billion and just announced another $110 billion wave through 2028. Apple is quietly building private clusters. Tesla is expanding Dojo. Oracle is promising hundreds of new AI data centers. CoreWeave, Crusoe, Lambda, xAI, Anthropic, and sovereign monsters like Saudi Arabia's 100-megawatt campuses and the UAE's 100,000 H100 cluster. Total capital already gone or irrevocably locked in today, north of $1.6 trillion, heading straight to $3 trillion by 2027 if nothing changes. Now the question nobody wants to answer on earnings calls. What did they actually make back? OpenAI ends 2025 at roughly $6 billion annualized revenue, $4 billion enterprise API, $2 billion consumer, compute burn, over $10 billion and rising. Annual loss, $4 to $5 billion. Valuation, $250 billion. 40-plus times revenue for a company that has never once been profitable. Microsoft still refuses a clean AI revenue line. The most generous Wall Street estimates put incremental 2025 AI revenue at $20 to $25 billion. Copilot, Azure AI, GitHub. They spent over $120 billion. Best case payback period, 6 to 8 years. Assuming costs stay flat and growth never slows, both already lies. Google's cloud AI services plus whatever Gemini adds to search and ads, 25 to 35 billion at the absolute ceiling. They spent $95 billion. Most of Gemini is still free because losing even 1% of search traffic would cost them tens of billions. Meta has essentially zero direct consumer AI revenue. Meta AI is free, Llama is open source, ad targeting got marginally better. The most optimistic analysts can isolate maybe $5 to $10 billion of extra ad revenue attributable to AI. They spent $65 billion. Amazon's Oz AI services, Bedrock, SageMaker, Trainium, are doing roughly $25 billion annualized. Alexa and consumer devices still lose billions every year. Total spend closing in on $200 billion. Every other frontier startup combined, Anthropic, xAI, Perplexity, Inflection, Cohere, Adept, Character, does not even reach $15 billion total revenue against more than $60 billion raised or burned. Add every single new AI dollar on the planet in 2025, consumer subscriptions, enterprise API, cloud margins, incremental ads, everything. And the absolute maximum is 150 billion annualized, against 1.6 trillion already spent and another 8 trillion still expected. That is a 1 to 60 revenue to spend ratio. Even Pets.com in 1999 was doing 1 to 10. Consumer subscriptions? Roughly 40 million people worldwide pay $20 to $30 a month. That is less than $12 billion a year total, less than Netflix makes from one price hike. Enterprise adoption? Thousands of pilots, almost zero production-scale deployments that move the needle. The 2025 studies are brutal. MIT says GitHub Copilot makes coders 26% faster on average. Stanford says writing tools give 15 to 20% gains. McKinsey's leaked internal study shows customer service agents handle calls 14% faster. These are real improvements, but they are incremental, not the 100 times productivity explosion sold to justify entire new power grids. The costs are structurally impossible. Training one frontier model in 2025 costs $500 million to $2 billion in compute alone. Inference is cheaper than last year, but still 4 to 6 times more expensive than traditional cloud per token. A single 100,000 GPU cluster eats 100 to 150 megawatts 24/7. That is $150 to $200 million a year in electricity and cooling for one building. Companies are building 50 to 100 of them. By 2027, AI wants more electricity than Japan. Grids in Virginia, Ireland, Sweden, Singapore, and half the United States are already rejecting new projects. NVIDIA is the bubble in its purest form. Data center revenue went from $15 billion in fiscal 2022 to $135 billion run rate today. The stock trades at 60 to 70 times forward earnings on the assumption that triple-digit growth lasts forever. 1 year of 30% capex growth instead of 100% and the entire valuation collapses. $900 to $250-300 is not bearish. It is simple arithmetic. This exact movie has played before. British Railway Mania 1870s. Thousands of miles of track, most lines never profitable, 90% of capital destroyed. Radio stocks 1920s. RCA up 100, down 95%. .com 2000, 3 trillion erased in 18 months. Crypto 2021, 2 trillion gone in 9 months. Same 6 steps every time. Breakthrough tech, changes everything story. Infinite TAM, capital tsunami, revenue never appears. 90% vanishes. 2025 is the year the growth cracks. Instead of another 8100% jump, spending growth falls to 20-30%. Still massive in absolute dollars, but catastrophic for valuations built on perpetual hypergrowth. January-February 2026. Earnings calls will include the phrase, right-sizing AI infrastructure spend to current ROI. That one sentence will wipe hundreds of billions off NVIDIA and the hyperscalers in a single week. By mid-2026, the write-offs begin. By 2027, the startup graveyard is complete. The $10 trillion fantasy becomes a $2 trillion reality. The technology itself will not die. 10 years from now, AI will be everywhere, quiet, profitable, boring. A handful of survivors will dominate, but the first $10 trillion was pure, distilled hype, permanently transferred from pension funds and index investors to chip makers, construction firms, and electric utilities. And when the history books are written, they won't say, I failed. They'll say we paid $10 trillion for a tool that, in the end, mostly wrote better emails, summarized meetings, and generated cat pictures, while the real winners were the people who sold the shovels in the greatest gold rush that never found any gold. So yes, they spent $10 trillion on and made pennies back. The biggest financial mania in recorded history is already over. We're just waiting for the rest of the world to notice. Like, if this made you rethink your portfolio, comment the single number that shocked you most and subscribe, because the next 12 months are going to be absolutely historic.